Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. Today, I have a very special guest, Christa Wojciechowski. She is the author of Oblivion Black and the creator of the Writers Mastermind group. Welcome, Christa.
Hi, Dan. It's great to be here.
I'm glad you could join me. So, Christa, let's start off with some more recent happenings in your writing life. You got a big year coming up. Oblivion Black is on pre-order right now. What can you tell us about Oblivion Black?
Right. Oh, it's a long story because this book is my first novel. And I don't know if I'd recommend every writer publishing their first novel. But I started this story, I think it was 2012 for National Novel Writing Month. So for those of you who don't know, it's in the month of November and you are supposed to complete a novel in 1 month. And I don't know why I decided, okay, I'm going to go for it. Because since I was a kid, I always wanted to try writing a novel. Maybe there was a few half-hearted attempts where I got through like a beginning chapter or something and gave up. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be able to do it, this might be the way. So I did do National Novel Writing Month, and it is a great way. Like if you're kind of unsure or procrastinating or having writer's block just to push through and make the word count every day. But I completed it. And then, like, the story continued. So I did another National Novel Writing Month, like the next year and then the following year, and made a series. But of course, after that, all the self doubt creeps in. And I spent like, remember I said 2012 and now it's 2022.
Okay.
I spent like the next 10 years rewriting, editing. I changed it all. I changed it all back to the way it was. And then finally, this past year or last year, I said, okay, I'm going to send it out for queries. If no one bites, then I'm going to self publish. And that's what I'm going to do. So it's on pre order now. Lynn Hansen, she's a fabulous cover designer. She's going to do the cover. It's coming out on July 22nd officially.
Can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek?
Yeah, it's like the timeless story of an artist and his muse, but with a dark twist. Originally, when I wanted to do the National Novel Writing Month, I was asking my sister, like, I really want to do this, but I don't have any ideas. And she came up with the idea of a sculptor and his muse, but it was, back a few centuries ago, and it was going to be a historical novel. And when I started digging into doing that, I realized this is way too much work. I'll never get it done. The
Mhm.
research alone to try to set it in a specific time, like Italy in the 18th century or something like that, I was like, I know right now I would never be able to do it. So I decided to make it set in the modern time and in split between New Hope, Pennsylvania area and New York City, and people with modern problems. The the protagonist, Ona Price, she's a recovering heroin addict, and the sculptor, he is he was sexually abused when he was a boy, and he's got PTSD from that. So they're both struggling with trauma and addiction and kind of find a place where they create this masterpiece together. But of course, something threatened their happiness. And that's where all the drama starts. So I don't want to give too much away, but
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And where can people go if they wanna pre-order that?
I made a short link. It's christawojo.com/OBUS, as in Oblivion Black, United States. And likewise, if you happen to be in the UK or Canada, the the links would be christawojo.com/OBCA for Canada and OBUK for UK.
I will also post a link on my Twitter page. So if you don't see that pop up shortly after this interview, please send me a reminder and I'll get that on there.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And but that's not the only thing you have going on this year, right? I believe you also have a re-release of your Sick novels coming out?
Yeah, this is true. Oh, one other note on Oblivion Black before we move on. I also tried it on Kindle Vella, and it's up there live right now. So if anyone wanted to start reading it right away, Kindle Vella is, Amazon's new sort of serial reading platform. So you can get it chapter by chapter, kind of like episode by episode, like Netflix. And it's already live there. I did an experiment to pre-release on there. So if you go exploring Kindle Vella, you can find it. And that's another interesting thing. If there are any writers who are listening, is the Kindle Vella. It's not, it hasn't been that great for building a new audience, but they do give bonuses there. So it is worthwhile for authors to try it out for a little extra income. I'm funding my cover design by using the Kindle Vella first.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So, okay. Yes. I, right now, I actually don't have any books out on Amazon. I had the six series up until last year, and it was strange. I got approached by a publishing company who found me on social media. And for writers, most writers are desperately trying to find an agent or publisher to give them the time of day. And so Raventail Publishing reached out to me and said they were interested in republishing my novels. And I was like, okay, what's the catch here? Because this never happens. But I guess they're a new publishing company and they are, looking for established writers. And so I agreed to take the six series down because I had self-published that starting in 2015, I think. And it got great reviews. It did really good when it first came out, but to try to keep momentum of selling that book on a long-term basis, like I just didn't have that kind of resources to do that. And I was excited by the idea of a new audience and, of course, new covers from them and just a new look, give it a makeover. I was excited by that idea. And so that is coming to market soon. I don't have an exact date, but it's in the final processes of being put together, the first in the series. And that should be out within the next few months, I believe.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, definitely gonna keep my eyes out for that. Are they, like, completely redoing the covers and everything on it?
Yes. Yeah, I was tempted to rewrite with those 2, but I didn't want to get back into that. But this series is about a wife who takes care of her chronically ill husband. Like, they lost everything to a sickness. They lost their wealth, their home. The guy is, like, constantly, in the hospital and having procedures done, and the doctors can't quite figure out why. And so just kind of an exploration of codependency and marriage. And again, he is also addicted to his medications. It's a big mess and it's based on a real disorder that I discovered, but don't want to give too much away on that. It's kind of a horror slash psychological suspense novel. And yeah, I had done my own covers previously. And I can get away with doing some graphic design, but I'm really not the best. And at the time, I was not familiar with, what's right for the genre. And I still don't know. I still really don't know. So I am entrusting them to do this and to just watch how it's done by a traditional publisher. So if you go to raventailpublishing.com, you can sign up for their list and they give a couple books away every month. So if you get on their mailing list, you'll get access to free books and new releases and all that kind of thing. But
Nope.
I'm excited because it's every writer's dream to go with a traditional publisher. And it wasn't really anything, that it was a series I'd already written. I just kind of gave up on it. So
Yeah,
it was such a nice surprise to resurrect it, see if it could come back to life.
and like you said, that doesn't usually happen where a publisher approaches you just kind of out of the blue like that,
Yes,
but
I was suspicious, but it was true.
So between the 6 series and Oblivion Black, it sounds like you like going with some of the darker themes in your books. Why is that? Like, why do you think you're drawn to that sort of thing?
At first, it really puzzled me because when I was first starting Oblivion Black, I was planning on writing a romance novel. And the story, as I was, rushing through the National Novel Writing Month, where I think you have to complete almost 2,000 words a day to make it, you really don't have time to think about what you're doing. I had a loose outline, but that was it. And it just took some really dark turns. And I think all dark fiction authors come to this point and they're like, whoa, should I go to a psychiatrist or something? Like, where is all this stuff coming from? But seemed to be the space I was comfortable with. And as I got more experienced as a writer and fell into my groove and style, I realized that dark fiction has a special way of bringing out your shadow side, parts of you that are hidden that you don't express, that, it's not appropriate to share in public, and allows you to kind of purge that or explore that in a safe place. Because everyone has a dark side. Everyone. I don't care who you are, if you're a priest or a nun or a Zen master or just, you know, the nicest person on the planet, you will have a dark side. And I think dark fiction is a place where we can look at that more fearlessly and examine it and analyze that. And like in my book, of course, my characters go through hell or came from a very dark place, but I always make sure, during their difficult journey, they learn more about themselves and they come to a place of self acceptance and like a place where they finally feel like they can or deserve to be happy. So it might sound really weird to have these really dark stories and then have this
Nope.
like happy ending or this kind of personal development spin on it. But that's usually what happens with me. Just I kind of have these broken characters that I heal. And every time I do that, it feels really good.
So would you say when you're writing it, it's kind of like almost therapeutic for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all writers kind of use writing as therapy, but especially for dark fiction and horror and all the subgenres, it's really healing to, like I said, get to your fears or, things that make you angry or the frustrations you need to get out and look at them head on and then try to resolve them, or at least accept it so that it's not just lurking behind and you're unconscious, making bad things happen in your life.
Earlier this year, I just wanted to talk about some of your influences writing. And earlier this year, I know the writing world lost one of its big authors with Anne Rice. I know she had a big impact on you. How has she affected your writing?
Oh, wow. The more I write, the more I realize how much she influenced me. I started reading her when, I was probably like 16 or something. And she was the first author that like I just couldn't put down the book because she had everything. She had like the fantasy element of being immortal or, these creatures with paranormal abilities. She had the like not so much romance, it's like sensuality and the kind of erotic undertones combined with these really deep philosophical questions. And so it just really ticked all the boxes for me and had my brain going at that age. And I just devoured everything that I could find of hers. And every book that came out, I was right there getting the hardcover. I have like a whole collection of the book still and occasionally pick one up to read it. And then, I didn't read her for a long time. I was exploring more like classic literature and things like that. I felt like my my education in the Florida public school system was not adequate. So I decided to educate myself and explore lots of the classics. And I put aside contemporary authors for a while. And then that's when I started writing after that. And now I see her influence the same. There's sort of a gothic touch to it. There's a lot of sensuality. There's always these psychological and philosophical questions, existential questions, and then also the exploration of attractions between people and the relationships and the complexity of relationships with people that is like really on so many layers that we don't even realize. So yeah, I kind of rediscovered the fact that I'm really deeply influenced by Anne Rice, and it's kind of cool to know that.
I've never read a Anne Rice novel. I've never even watched any of the movies that are based on her books. What would be a good place to start?
Well, the first one I read, and I think it's still my favorite, is The Vampire Lestat. And what charms me most about this book is it's written in first person. And so the vampire Lestat is talking directly to you, which when you're 16 years old, just imagining that is so much fun. And it's really a fun thing to fantasize about. And I kind of copy that as a writer. I love that first person intimacy between the character and the reader. Like you're having a conversation with them and maybe they're like right outside your window. Who knows? But I would recommend that one.
Okay.
But the interview with the vampire is the first one, and I read that afterwards. And I don't know. For me, I liked reading the vampire list at first because in Interview with a Vampire, he's kind of portrayed as a bad guy. And then you get his side of the story. And I thought it was kind of cool getting his side of the story first before reading all the bad things Louis said about him in the first books. It's up to you. But she also has really great books. The Taltos, the Mayfair Witches series. I really like that, Taltos. And then she even went to, I think it's called Christ Out of Egypt. Like she covers a lot of religious things. And there was one called, oh, I can't remember. I don't have my book collection here with me because I moved to Panama and I did not lug all those books down here with me. They're at my sister's house. I don't have them on hand, but yeah, I am not a vampire book fan, even after, starting with Anne Rice very early on. But her books are more than just about vampires. So,
Okay, I'm definitely
yeah.
gonna check that out. So just now you mentioned that you live in Panama. I know that in 2020 when the whole COVID thing started, you were in Florida at the time, so you were stuck away from home for quite a while. How did that affect your writing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I had left Panama. My husband, Marco, and I, we had just had our Valentine's Day dinner. And like the day after that, I got on a plane, went to the US, and he was like, this virus is getting bad. You better be really careful. I'm like, no, no, it's in China. We'll be fine. It's just a, media hype. So I think go to the US to visit my family. And by the time it was time for me to leave, they had closed down the Panamanian airport because of the pandemic. And I could not get out, and it was shut down for 8 months. So, I mean, it wasn't the worst thing in the world to be with my parents during that time. It was scary though, back when going to be food shortages, there's no toilet paper anywhere. you know, you can't leave the house. We're in lockdown. It was really freaking. And it felt like, am I in a post apocalyptic story here? What is going on? This is too crazy to be really happening. So I was stuck there for 8 months. I was so stressed out and upset that I didn't get a lot of fiction writing done. But what I did do is I started the Writer Mastermind, and that I was able to work on. And Writers Mastermind is a membership group where I have courses. And as Dan knows, he's been one of my members for like the past 2 years.
Yes.
One of the first, and we have Zoom meetings where we write together. We have mastermind meetings where I bring on a guest and we discuss, you know, many topics. We have classes on creating characters, on publicizing your book, on developing your author platform, on planning out your books, all kinds of things. Well, that was a great time to start that because everyone was in lockdown and everyone was looking for something to do and everyone was lonely and bored. So hopping online to a virtual Zoom call with a bunch of other writers like really helped get us through that time, I think. And so, yes, it was a very stressful time of uncertainty, especially because they didn't tell you, like, okay, we're going to be closed for 8 months. So, when you're going back, I didn't know I had to call the airline every month and, move my ticket ahead. And then the government would make an announcement. Nope, nope, we're not opening yet.
Jeez.
So it just seemed like this endless cycle. And, part of you wonders, am I ever going to go home? Am I ever going to see my husband and my dogs again? So yeah, I finally made it back. And it seemed all like a bad dream, but I still get nervous. Like every time I fly to a different country, I'm traumatized that, there's going to be some freakish outbreak and that I'm going to be stuck somewhere again. But yeah, that didn't help my writing. Well, I mean, I did write one story during that time, and it was based on me and my husband being apart. And, to be honest, that might be my breakthrough story because I submitted it to an anthology called Chiral Mad, and they accepted it. And then I was able to get into the Horror Writers Association because that was my first professional market story. And then I got two more anthologies during last year. So it kind of was seeds were planted during that time when I was stuck in the little guest room at my parents' house that are now coming to fruition. So just like my characters go through all these horrible things, come out to the sunshine at the other side, it's kind of something like that.
Let's talk a little bit more about the writer's mastermind. So it started during the COVID lockdown, but did you already have an idea for it before that happened?
Yeah, I had started a blog, writing blog on letsgetpublished.com. And I had started developing the website. Like I was setting up all the structure and which, it was like a huge process for me. I have some web design experience, but building a membership platform is a very intricate thing to do. And lots of things can go wrong. And you have to have, logins for multiple members and the payment systems set up and everything like that. So I already had this idea in mind before I got there. But when I got there was when I finally said, okay, I was thinking maybe I should wait till all this is over to launch a business because we don't know what's going to happen. And just, I really had nothing else to do except to launch it. And I said, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. And I did. And like I said, I think it was a good time to launch it. And truly, like the activity has dropped off a lot in the mastermind because people have gone back to work. They're busy again. They're going out with their families. So it was actually easier to run the group back then during lockdown than it is now. But
Right.
I'm trying to get more options for everyone's busy schedule and it's continuing to evolve.
Like you said, I'm a member of the group.
Mhm.
Over the past year, unfortunately, my writing has taken a little bit of a back seat because I had a baby.
Uh,
But when I was being an active member of the group, it was definitely helping my creativity. It was definitely beneficial. If anyone out there is interested in writing, I'd say you should at least go check it out. Krista, I believe there is a free trial available.
Yes, we have a 2-week free trial. You can go to writersmastermindgroup.com to sign up. And after that, it's only $20 a month. And that includes the courses, all the masterminds and meetings, the write-ins where we write together. And also sometimes we have events like we have to read aloud mashup where everyone takes turns reading the work aloud. in the future, I want to plan maybe some live writing retreat in different locations. I'm talking to one of the members about that, and we're going to collaborate on that. And
That'd be a
who
lot of
knows what
fun.
the future holds? Yeah, before it was like when COVID was really rampant, the thought of having a live retreat was like, that's not going to work. Nobody's going to come. But now things are starting to return back to normal and travel's not so difficult with the testing and all the requirements for vaccination and testing have loosened up. So it's easier for people to travel. Of course, it's more expensive right now. Like the fuel prices are crazy, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe next year or the year after we can start doing some live events. Also we help cross promote each other and things like that. And some of my members have had great success. And like I said, I myself have had some breakthroughs in the past few years, and I owe that to the group because without it, I just really didn't have the discipline to stick with things and having to show up for my writers every week on Zoom forces me to work on writing and not let other things get in the way, which was always the case before. Yeah, it's helped me probably even more than it's helped everyone else.
Yeah, I was gonna say since I joined a couple years ago, it's been neat seeing the how much success some of the members have been having during that time.
Yeah, yeah. If you have published their first books ever or finished the books that they never could finish before, and then others have won awards and others have, you know, got acceptances, short story acceptances. And yeah, everyone's moving forward. And I really love seeing that because I think the biggest tragedy is if you have a dream, if you have stories inside you and you just let them sit there, I think that's the biggest tragedy. I think everyone has something inside them that's really special that needs to be in the world that someone else needs to read. And it's a tragedy if that never happens because everyday life stuff gets in the way. So that's kind of the aim of the group.
Just to give everyone an idea of some of the things that we do there. Like the last couple years, at the end of the year, we've done a writers mashup where we each kind of go uh, on Zoom and we read an excerpt of something that we've written during the year, and then that gets thrown together into a video, and that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the year because I don't always get to read what everyone's working on because some people are not ready for other eyes to see it yet. But at the end of the year, everyone picks something and I love seeing it because we have people from all over the world from the UK, Ireland, Lebanon, one from New Zealand, Canada, all over the United States, and then me here in Central America. So it's really fascinating to see everyone read their work from different countries. You see everyone in their little corner of the world. And not only do we have many different nationalities, we also have many different genres. So we have sci-fi writers, horror writers, romance writers, fantasy writers, literary fiction writers. So it's a little sampling of everyone in the group. And not only is a great way for them to showcase themselves, especially the people who haven't been published yet, but it's good for the writers, I think, to read their work out loud and because most of us are kind of shy and introverted, and it's a good way to challenge yourself and get out there and express yourself and get the words like out in the open. So I think that feels good. It's kind of freeing in a way.
Absolutely, I agree. Where do you see the group going in a few years from now?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that because I've been having a lot of ideas. Mainly, what I've discovered over the past 2 years running the group is that all these writers, including myself, have the resources, the capability to become successful The problem is more of the mindset. So it doesn't matter how many classes I put up about how to publicize your book or how to do your author platform or how to plan to make income from your books if they're not going to do it. And I think what stands in many writers' way is not only just they feel like because it doesn't earn them money yet, it's not a priority. So they don't feel like they should be cutting out time from work or family to do it. I mean, even if this is not a conscious belief, I think unconsciously we all kind of feel like that. It's also just a fear of putting yourself out there. If you're writing fiction at the level that you should be, you are revealing a lot about yourself, and it's scary putting that out there. So I like trying to think of workshops that I can create to kind of like break out of that sort of shell we put around ourselves. It's like an invisible barrier that we can't get through. Like we can write the book, but no one's going to know it exists unless we publicize the book and know that it's worth publicizing and know that it needs to be out there. So I haven't quite figured out the lineup of topics we'll cover, but uh, once again, kind of is like my characters. It's probably going to have like a little bit of a woo woo, like law of attraction thing mixed with like practical, psychological, personal development stuff because like everyone in the group is so super talented and like you see other successful writers out there who I know are not as good as some of the writers in my groups. And it's like, what is wrong with this picture? And it's because they're not investing in their writing enough or investing in themselves enough to become the person they need to become a success, just like in any other business. And then combine that with the fact that I want to focus more on not focusing on the money part, paradoxically, not
Mhm.
focusing so much on the success part as in like I was talking about before, like the healing function of storytelling for the writer and the reader. The writer sort of, goes through this process of purging and, sifting through things and resolving them for themselves. And then the reader too says, hey, I've been there before. I thought I was the only one, but this writer has been through it. And even though it's fiction, fiction makes it a safe place because you're not like confronting it face to face. It's kind of like in the periphery where it's bearable. So I want to focus on that more like the importance of fiction. It's not just entertainment. It's not just escape. It can be like a vehicle for changing your life. I don't know if you've read authors that like something inside you clicked when you read them and you never saw the world the same way again. So that's a huge responsibility for us as fiction writers. And not all fiction writers have that in mind. Not some just want to entertain and help people escape. And that's a noble thing to do. But I feel like with the writers mastermind that we need to do something on a deeper level, or at least the authors who feel like they want to do something on a deeper level. And that's the people I want to draw in and then make sure their work gets out there. So in a nutshell,
Yeah.
that's kind of what my brain is thinking of for the future.
Okay. No, I like the way your brain is thinking. I think that all sounds really cool. As I said, my writing has kind of gone off the wayside the past year, but it's definitely always on my mind. And I'm just because I'm not writing doesn't mean I'm not thinking of ideas. And it's just a matter of getting those ideas onto paper again.
New dads are excused. Okay. You're a new dad and you had the new job starting. It will take a while for the dust to settle and to carve out a little time for yourself. But yeah, definitely can't wait till you pick up the pen, as they say, And right, you're totally right. Even though you're not actually writing, things are sort of gelling and materializing in your head. And then one day you'll sit down and it'll all come out. It'll all come out perfect. No, I'm just kidding.
I never
It'll
want you to
probably
do
be a
that.
big mess, but it'll be great.
So, Krista, so
Uh-huh.
for your own writing, what are some of your goals as far as that goes? Like, where do you see yourself as an author in the future?
Oh, yeah. I like that question because a lot of us don't really like make a clear picture of what we want our future to look like. And that's another part of the reason why we're just kind of stumbling along the way. Like I like to focus on goal setting, not to be rigid and super driven, but just so like the pathway you're supposed to be taking and you don't get distracted and go off and do other things. In the future, like I said, Oblivion Black is a three-part series. I've also already uploaded the sequel to Kindle Vella, and I'm hoping that book will be released maybe 6 months after Oblivion Black. And then I'll have the third book coming out. After that, I had a novella in a series called Project 13 Dark. It was a crowdfunded project and it was called Conviction. And this story, Conviction, is about a boy who is found by this mysterious young man who has like a commune on this farm where they believe that you cannot eat meat unless you're fit enough to kill the animal with your bare hands.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's the premise. Like they believe that, in our society where we're just mass producing animals and slaughtering them and the meat is sitting there waiting for us at the grocery store, that it's making humanity weaker. And so they have their own way of doing things on that commune. But of course, weird things happen there. And it ends up kind of in a disaster. But that premise and that world that I built on that farm in that novella, I felt I could take it a lot further. There were so many interesting things that could happen on that farm that I didn't get to play with yet. So I think I'm going to expand that into a three-part series like Sick, which is three novellas, not three full-length novels. I think this three novellas is a good format because readers get to try you out. They don't have to commit to a huge novel. And it's easier for the writer to produce a shorter book instead of the big ones that like my first series took 10 years to even get to the point of publishing. But so I plan to do that and I'll be having a lot more short stories coming out. I'm taking a class with Richard Thomas. He's an awesome dark fiction writer. This will be my third class with him. And I love taking classes with him because it's one of those things, like I said, where you you won't commit to writing unless you kind of have some chips on the table. And, if I pay for a class with Richard Thomas, I'm going to write the stories I'm supposed to write for that class. I won't do it for myself, on an
must
ordinary
not.
day. Right. So that class will force me to write four short stories. So the previous classes, I placed all those stories. One most recently won the Colorado Book Award for the Shadow Atlas anthology, which is like huge because, you know, during COVID 2 years ago, I had nothing to put on my resume. And now all of a sudden I have all these things coming out. And it's due to that, having those classes and being held accountable to producing your art. So yeah, more short stories coming out. And then after that, who knows?
Hmm. Oh, so
If I could get these out, I'm trying to just get into a process where I'm not sitting on stuff so long anymore, like I did the mistake with the National Novel Writing Month books,
right.
just to keep them flowing.
So as an author, what does success look like to you?
For me, before success was to earn enough money from writing to where I could quit my day job. And I like to still believe that's possible. I do believe it's possible. if, like I said, I can become that person, this is kind of like my first step going on a podcast. Normally, I would have been terrified to death. I still am scared, but
You're doing
oh, thank you. Thank you. You're a great host.
oh, thank you.
But yeah, like getting over this hump of promoting myself and things like that. Because if you do it, because I used to work for other authors and I plan their publicity tours. And if you do it, then you will sell books. But if you're just sitting, hiding in your room, no, no one's going to know you exist. So part of, that success picture would mean me having to, come and talk on shows like this more often. But now that I run the writing group and it's really starting to get a bigger purpose and it's getting like to a mission that really excites me, that is also kind of tied in with my whole success picture. So I think a lot of authors now you hear are not just writing fiction books and selling them on Kindle. They are exploring all other kinds of revenue streams. Like I'm trying the Kindle Vella. Other people are making money on Wattpad. There are, I don't know if you heard of NFTs.
I have.
Yeah, the blockchain stuff, which totally makes my brain explode, but I'm
Yes.
trying to learn about it. The things I learned about it so far are really cool. If you want to learn about that, go to Joanna Penn podcast because she's like the one who's got the scoop on that. She's got a really good handle on that. So the future looks really interesting when it comes to the blockchain because as an author, you can have it set up to where you have a book, you sell tokens for your book, and it's kind of like investing in a company. Every reader puts an investment into your book, but they also get a part of your royalties from that book. So not only did they help invest in your book, but they are going to market that book for you because they're making, money every time you sell a book. So it's like hard to explain. Like say you buy into Tesla, say you buy some Tesla stocks. Of course, whenever you're out and about in public, you're going to be like, yay, Tesla, buy Tesla, please buy it because you're going to benefit from that. So when you think about it that way, it's really exciting. And then also kind of making a community around your writing and having the readers kind of participate and co-create with you. Like that really excites me. I like that kind of give and take between reader and writers. I don't think it's a passive thing. I think there's a dynamic relationship between readers and writers. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yes. Yes. Other than the writing and the the mastermind group, what are some other creative outlets for you?
oh, it's interesting that you asked that. One of the things I started doing in the Writer's Mastermind, there's a book called The Artist's Way that's been around for a while by Julia Cameron. And it's like a 12-step workbook that helps you to kind of break through creatively when you're stuck. And I started doing it in the group. And every weekend, you're supposed to do an artist date, which means kind of going out and doing something you've never done before to spark creativity and kind of get you out of the rut. And so some of the things I've been doing, this is hilarious. My father, I don't know, in some passing conversation, I mentioned that I would like to play a stringed instrument. And last time I went to visit, he bought me a viola.
Oh, that's cool.
It is really cool. It is really cool. It was such a huge surprise. And I've started learning the viola. And you know what? It is really difficult. It's like your body has to be in the exact right positions to play the notes. Your hand has to be strong. Your fingers have to be placed in certain ways to hit the right notes or to hold the bow correctly. The bow has to be the correct tightness. It has to have the rosin on it. But you have to tune the instrument every time before you play. Like there's this whole pre-playing ritual that you have to do. And it's a really cool creative outlet because it forces you to slow down. Like you cannot just pick up a viola and rush into playing it. Maybe if you're an expert player, but for a beginner to learn something like that, it's really forces you to slow down and pay attention to what you're doing. And I think that's really needed these days where our brains are operating on hyperspeed and we don't have a lot of quiet moments where we are forced to slow down and pay attention to what we're doing.
Oh,
So, yeah, so if you want to slow down your brain, learn something like the viola that's extremely difficult and will make the ears bleed of everyone in the household. Sounds terrible when you first start. But other creative outlets, aside from writing, I used to do a lot of sketching and little painting here and there. I haven't been doing that lately. I do a lot of reading, of course, and I spend a lot of time outdoors. That is my sanctuary. So yeah, that's about it creatively. Not very interesting.
have you read any good books lately that you'd recommend?
Oh yeah. I read one recently called Wait. It's out by Grindhouse Press. I think her name is Lisa Kolvanek. I don't know if I pronounced that right, or hopefully I got it right. That was a really wild and dark book, but I just plowed through it. And, I love to see female authors who are super edgy and pushing boundaries. And she did it. Boy, did she push some boundaries. That's what I try to do in my fiction. So I love to see other female writers do the same thing. So I highly recommend Faith when it comes to something really dark and edgy and a bit disturbing, but also there's kind of a love story in it. Well, I don't want to spoil the ending. Anyway, I highly recommend that. Otherwise, I haven't, I'm trying to look at my list of books here. I haven't been reading a lot of fiction lately. Believe it or not, I read like a lot of psychology books and things like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I do have some cool stuff on my reading list. There's one called Tender is the Flesh. That is by, yeah, I'm looking for more dark fiction female authors because that is the sphere I operate in. And I kind of want to see, not only see what's out there, but possibly connect and collaborate with these women. Okay. Tender is the Flesh is Augustina Batsterica. And then I also, at the recommendation of Jerry Stahl, who wrote Permanent Midnight, he wrote the blurb for Popsicle, which is another novella that I have coming out by Bloodshot Books. My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. So those are on my reading list. That is what I have queued up here. I'm doing a binge of female dark fiction writers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take note some of those. On the along the topic of dark fiction, earlier on you mentioned that you became a member of the Horror Writers Association. What does that mean exactly? Like, what is that group all about?
Well, the Horror Writers Association is the organization that awards the Bram Stoker Award, which is one of the most coveted awards you can get as a dark fiction writer. So, being part of the Horror Writers Association means not only can you nominate, you can vote for your favorite books of the year. So, you have a voice when it comes to where you think the horror community is going. And then not only that, they have a lot of perks for you. Just, for one, saying that you're a member gives you an added layer of credibility as a writer. If they know you're part of the Horror Writers Association, they know you've had to sell to a professional market. So you're operating at that level. You're not a novice anymore. And I think that holds extra weight. Say if you're submitting a story or you're approaching a publisher or an agent. to say that you're a member of the Horror Writers Association, then, they know, you're legit, I guess. And then you can publicize your book with them. They have a Facebook group. You can collaborate with all the others. And it's just great to meet all the other writers that are in that sphere. I used to underestimate networking. I was the lonely writer, and that was the story I told myself. And that's how it was supposed to be, this romantic notion. Because I live in a foreign country, I'm a homebody. And so thought, well, this is it. I'm just going to sit here alone and write books. But it's really hard to sell books when you're just all by yourself and no one is around you to read the book.
Right.
So I can't emphasize enough that if you haven't reached out to at least a few other people, that you should, and start networking, whether it's on social media or in your local area or whatever, or like in the writers mastermind group. It's just so much easier when you have a group of other writers around you. Cause I don't know about you. I don't know any writers, in my local community, like in person. So if you have to go online to find other writers, then I highly suggest you do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It is easier when you have a group of like-minded people around you. I think that definitely helps a lot. Um, Krista, what do you have any kind of like writing rituals? Like, does the scenery have to be just right for you to be able to write something?
No, there have been times like if I do, embark on a national novel writing month or some sort of writing spree where I have written from a speeding car, like I can sit and write anywhere if I have, an idea. But typically, I just like Wednesdays and Saturdays, I'll set aside like 2 days for writing. I'm not one of those people who is good at like breaking things up, like, oh, just write an hour in the morning or something before work. Cause it takes me about an hour just to kind of get into the story again and start writing. So just on Wednesdays and Saturdays, I don't do anything except I get up, walk the dog, make the coffee. I don't check my email. I don't look at anything. I just open up my Scrivener and I start working on the book. And so I have the 2 days a week where I make sure I do that and nothing else till about maybe 2 in the afternoon. And then the rest of the week, I throw in the marketing and then I'm doing stuff for the mastermind group. And I still work as a digital marketer. I still have clients for that. So I block it in big chunks of time. I'm not one of those people who I heard of those like 15-minute writers. They write like 15 minutes whenever they can. I'm like, there is no way I can't even formulate a sentence in 15 minutes. So,
I
so that's the routine.
I saw something that Neil Gaiman wrote on Twitter a few months ago about how when he wrote the book Coraline, he did it writing like only 100 words a day because that's all the time that he had at the moment. So that gives me
Wow.
hope. If you can only do 100 words a day and still come up with a novel, I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I love that. That shows dedication
Yeah,
when, yeah, you're willing to do it no matter what, even if you can only get 100 words a day. That's amazing. So, yeah, for people like you, new dads who have a full-time job, you got to do it however you can.
right.
You know, not everyone can set aside like a full morning for writing. And it's better to squeeze it in where you can than to not do it at all.
Yeah, it's just important to remember that no matter how many words a day you're writing, or if you're not writing at all, if you're just thinking about it, it's still progress.
Yes. Yeah. And it's always good to carry around a notebook, or with me, I use a notes app in my phone. And whenever I'm like sitting around and get some random crazy story idea or character idea, just to write it down. And then when you do have time to write and you're like, oh, I don't know what to write now that I have time to write,
Hmm.
then you just go through your little list of ideas until something jumps out at you, and start from there.
Yeah. All right, Krista, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today. And as as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, you have some books coming out later this year. We got Oblivion Black. We've also got the re-release of the sixth series, and people can find you on KristaWojo.com. Where else can they find you at?
Yeah, on Twitter and Instagram, I'm Christa Wojo. So yeah, I shortened my last name on social media to make everyone's life easier. Now I regret not making a pen name, but oh well, we're stuck with the Husky. On Facebook, I'm Christa Wojo 22. It's probably just easiest to go to my website, christawojo.com, because that connects all my social media. And also you can get on my emailing list where you can get advanced review copies of the books. You'll get all the news when new stuff is coming out. And then if you're a writer, you can head over to writersmastermindgroup.com to start your free trial, or just go on the website and check out all the features we have for you.
Is it still on Let's Get Published also?
Yeah, let's get published.com is where we have the blog. They're interconnected though, so you can go from the blog to the membership site and vice versa.
Okay, awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Krista, thank you again for joining me today. It's been great having you, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And I look forward to sharing your show with everyone I know.
Well, thank you. All right, and thanks all of you for joining us today. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.